So we got a letter from Dan Jarvis. And it's a bit of a Brexit letter as well. Well, the deal letter, more to say. So, dear sir, thank you for getting in touch with me about Tuesday's vote. As you may be aware, I voted against accepting the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement. I did so because it was not a deal that would best serve the interests of the people of Barnsley or our country. Since the outset of her negotiations with the EU, the Prime Minister has not only failed to build parliamentary consensus on the best way forward, but has established unnecessary red lines, pursued the wrong priorities and ignored the needs of communities like ours. Completely agree. The reason why we are in this mess is precisely because of these red lines. You know, not only that, but you know, my response to Dan Jarvis is these past 2 years have proved nothing. They've only gone to show that we already have the best deal. You know, we are a member of the European Union. That is the best deal we can possibly get. But you have all these fantasists of people thinking that we can somehow leave this club and yet still demand access to this club without having to pay for it or follow any of their rules. Not only that, but I have to remind people that we followed the European rules, yet you have Donald Trump, who is clearly open and stated, we must, if we want to do a trade deal with them, we've got to follow their rules and regulations. So if we did that and signed that trade deal, we would be following and giving up our sovereignty to the Republican Party of the United States. You know, it boggles the mind that they're fine with that deal, but they're not fine when we have some of the best food standards in the world when we follow the European Union's rules, which, by the way, we agree with. Oh yes, and by the way, obviously, Barnsley, it's in the area that if we went with a no deal, would lose 16% of its regional GDP. So, absolutely not, and it flabbergasts me that you have people, when this happened, We Are Barnsley put out a thing saying, what do you think? And people were just like, oh yeah, no deal, no deal. So I literally just chimed out going, okay, if you want a no deal, you have to accept the government's own figures from the Department of Exiting the European Union, clearly stated, and they've not changed this, by the way, that under a no deal scenario, this region would lose 16% of its GDP. So, if you want that and want this no-deal scenario, then you can no longer complain about being poor, about austerity, about the lack of investment in this region, because that is exactly what you voted for. Yes, as a result, her negotiations have floundered, and the deal she proposed fails to deliver in 4 key areas. Workers' rights, completely right. They are the people, I keep on saying this, the ERG, the group that has been behind all this nonsense, has been very clear they want to get rid of workers' rights completely. So all these people in working class communities, you lose everything. So much. So, 4 key areas: workers' rights, regional and economic investment. We already had that from the EU. And as I like to point out again, people always say, oh, the government doesn't care about us, they haven't invested in the region. You know what institution did care about this region? What did invest in this region? The EU. Our future trading relationship with Europe, again, massively important. Massively important for this region. And national sovereignty. I'm sorry, Dan, national sovereignty is bullshit in this modern age. The idea that we had somehow lost sovereignty is completely nonsense. Not only do you have the House of Lords saying we never lost any sovereignty, but a white paper came out that's basically said, while it may look like Britain has lost sovereignty to the EU, that is not the case. You know, it flabbergasts me, it really does. And that is just not an argument to use. You know, not only that, but the European Union is the most successful single market in the world because all the countries cooperate together. That's why it's so successful. So, in short, the deal I voted on was not good enough, and I think the Prime Minister must now reconsider all available options and her position. And by the way, Theresa May, as of doing this recording, has yet to put forward another plan, even though Parliament said she must come up with another plan. All she's gone to, by the way, is back to the EU with her original deal, which is absolutely flabbergasting. It is ridiculous. But there you have it. That's the situation we are in. And by the way, talks with other leaders, party leaders, are not another option. That's not trying to sort this mess out. You know, Brexiteers are responsible for this. Where's their plan? Where's the ERG's plan for Brexit? Oh, that's right, they don't have one. Where's Nigel Farage's plan? Oh, that's right, he won't give it out. So, anyway, he continues. So, as both your MP and Mayor, and as someone who campaigned for Remain, I have been working hard to prepare for any exit from the European Union. I have met with ministers from the Department of Exiting the European Union to discuss the impact that the government's deal will have on South Yorkshire. And as we know, 16% of GDP loss in this area is massive. Massive. That is not something bear in mind, this area is still suffering from the long-term effects of the miners' strike that happened in the 80s. Was it the 80s? I can't remember. I seem to want to say like 1984. I can't remember. But yeah, bear that in mind. This area is still suffering from those effects, and you've still got the case that wages are still £400 less than they were before the 2008 crash. And now you want to add that on top of this. Mr. Jarvis should be completely and absolutely abandoning Brexit. And I encourage Mr. Jarvis to stand up and just say, I'm sorry, Brexit is an absolutely terrible idea, and I'm just going to start voicing this. You know, I keep on saying this, the referendum was only advisory. The Parliament does not have to follow through on it. It's completely doable. So despite deal on South Yorkshire, and earlier this month I met with the Chancellor to discuss post-Brexit investment in our country, which is none, by the way. The Chancellor has announced nothing, and if you expect this Tory government that has only taken more money away from investment, they're not going to start doing it now. I'm also working to ensure that Yorkshire is not overlooked in favour of London and the South East, and have made it my priority to ensure that our region gets its fair share of government investment intended to mitigate the impact of Brexit. Then why have you not... This is so funny because we have to have a bit of story time. So you might have noticed Dan said that he's the Mayor of South Yorkshire. Only last year, we discussed this in a video. People did not want a Sheffield City region. We voted unanimously in fact, for a one Yorkshire regional deal. But, bizarrely, we went and had the South Yorkshire election for mayor, the Sheffield City region exists. It's funny that people don't bang on about, you know, Dan Jarvis ignoring the will of the people. It's almost like these people really don't care. So, he continues, this investment would help us build on the achievements of the Mayoral Combined Authority, which is South Yorkshire Sheffield City region, and the Local Enterprise Partnership, which under my leadership has overseen £42 million worth of investment in our local economy and community, expected to rise to £86 million by the end of March. And then Brexit happens. You notice it's only forecasting to March. This is, of course, much more. This is, of course, much more to do. Not least the implementation of my transport strategy. I agree with this transport strategy. Investing lots more in the transport, again, South Yorkshire, excellent, good idea, desperately needs doing. I'm looking forward, although, bear that in mind, if this was the One Yorkshire plan and he was the mayor of Yorkshire, he would have a lot more clout and then we've gained a lot more money to be able to do the improvements for all of Yorkshire rather than just South Yorkshire. And another thing I need to point out is he's saying that also working to ensure that Yorkshire is not overlooked in favour of London. One of the reasons why people are so against the Sheffield City region is because we do not want all that investment going to Sheffield, which, again, it's a big city, so it's going to attract and draw all that investment. That investment needs to be spread around. The One Yorkshire plan had that in mind. So once again, I thank you for taking time to contact me about this important matter. Whether we exit the European Union, and if so, how we are to do it. The two of the most important decisions we have made in decades. It is vital that if we exit the EU, we do so in a way that minimises both the damage to Barnsley and our country. Then just don't do Brexit. Simple as that. Simple as that, Dan. I'm sorry, but that's the simple answer. It is now incumbent upon the Prime Minister to make this happen, and I will look very carefully at any new deal she brings back to Parliament, which, by the sound of it, is basically going to be the same deal. You know, this is, you know, this is the political situation in the UK at the moment. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing again and again and expecting to get a different result. Please do not hesitate to get in touch again with any further questions you may have on this issue. My best wishes, Dan Jarvis. So that's basically Dan Jarvis, basically not being brave enough to stand up and say that Brexit is a bad idea and that it's bad for this region, it's bad for this country, it's bad for the town. You know, I can't say any better than that.